All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 3 o'clock. Chad here. We start with the NBA draft. The Trailblazers moved 5 spots back with the Memphis Grizzlies and landed 7-1 center from China, Young Hansen. After the draft, Joe Cronin was asked if Chinese Jokic is a fitting nickname.
Nobody's Jokic. That's a tough one. That's a big shoes to fill. But as far as, his ability to pass the ball, there's not too many his size that can do it like he does.
In the trade, Portland also acquired a 2028 first-round pick and 2 future seconds. The second round of the draft will kick off at 5 on ESPN. As of right now, the Trailblazers do not own a second-round pick. The next big date in the NBA, free agency, kicks off on June 30th at 3 Portland time. From the NFL, former Ravens kicker Justin Tucker has been suspended by the league for the first 10 weeks of the season for violating the league's conduct policy. Hillsborough Hops will host Spokane tonight. First pitch at 6:35, pregame at 6:20 on Rip City Radio.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
With the first pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Dallas Mavericks select Cooper Flagg from Duke University.
To me, he doesn't do anything great. He just do a lot of very good. You know what I'm saying?
The Portland Trailblazers select Cedric Coward from Washington State University.
Okay, there is Cedric Coward, but according to Shams Charania, the Blazers are trading Cedric Coward at number 11 to the Memphis Grizzlies.
With the 16th pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select Young Hansen from Zibo, China, and the Qingdao Eagles.
That is not what I was expecting.
Nor was I.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
So the Portland Trailblazers select Colin Coward here. This is a young man with the ultimate bet on yourself story.
All right, what a thrill. Travis Demers, the voice of your Trailblazers in studio. He's going to hang out with me for the next couple of hours. So I've got to know because it's so awesome. You're on air with Francis Williams. And You guys are doing a great job. I know I had no idea who Young Hansen was when the pick went down. What was it like being on air in that moment with Francis when that selection was made?
So I had an idea in my head. I'm thinking, okay, they moved back. This guy's still available. They're going to get their guy, and I'm waiting. You know, when you're watching the draft and you're waiting for it, and you hear that first syllable, right? Because that's you're the first. You wait for that first note. And you're like, yeah, that's our guy. And then you hear a different sound.
Yeah.
You don't hear the whatever it was that you were thinking. You're like, wait, what? Who? Huh? And I looked at Francis, and he gave me this look like, what? Now, keep in mind, Francis has been a scout in the NBA. He has a wide Rolodex of basketball people that he talks to. He is as good as it gets in the Northwest in terms of knowing draft personnel. He loves it, right? It's like his Christmas. It's one of his favorite days of the year. It's one of the reasons I love having him on the draft show, and we've done the show together with him, Chad, is that he is so good at just knowing the history of these guys, their parents, their families, their upbringings, where they come from, what kind of game they have. So many details that you and I couldn't possibly understand because of his scouting background. Not only did he not have anything on Young Hansen, nobody that he talked to even mentioned him. He was completely off the radar in the first round. Now, again, he's off the radar to the media, to the fans, but he's obviously not off the radar to the Blazers, who have been scouting him for a couple of years. And as more information comes through, there are several reports out there that Minnesota was ready to take him with the 17th overall pick, and as soon as the Blazers drafted him, they weren't happy. You can see the looks on their face. There were other teams that were reportedly interested in drafting him, I think either New Orleans or Atlanta. So while it was a shock to a lot of people, it wasn't a shock to the people who really knew what was going on.
Isn't it great how global the NBA game is now to where you get tipped off on a guy who's playing club ball in China and you take a look at him, and then you send scouts on the other side of the world to follow a guy. They thought he would declare last year. He did not, and then they just continued to scout and stayed on top of that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true. It is true that Dwap Reith played with him in China a few years ago, so he would have been, what, 17, 16 years old? I mean, today's his 20th birthday. He shares a birthday with my son, Lawson. Happy birthday, buddy. And happy birthday to young Hansen. Yeah, he's 20. He was born in 2005. Let that sink in for a minute. So, and I don't know if there's any truth to this. I would love to know the backstory. And if Yang turns into, a legend or a great player, even a really good player, I'm sure we'll find out more about this backstory. But there is a rumor out there that Dwap Reith is the one who recommended Young to the Blazers in the first place because they played together a few years ago. I have no idea how true that is. There could be zero truth to it whatsoever. But if it is, man, and he turns into something special, get him a lifetime job.
Yeah, lifetime job, key to the city. If he turns out to be Chinese Jokic, then we got to make sure Reef is taken care of.
Yeah, get him a scouting job, honorary captain, ambassador, whatever it takes, because the scout who discovers somebody, and I don't want to take any credit away from the scouting department, because there could be somebody in the scouting department that noticed him, and those guys work so hard, and you never hear who they are. So when we're talking about, hey, Joe Cronin made this pick yesterday, he did, and Francis made a great point yesterday that Joe is the one whose face is on this. He's going to get the credit if it's a genius move, and if it works out, it is a genius move. And he's going to take the blame if it doesn't work out. I don't really think there's much of an in-between there. But Mike Schmidt's fingerprints are all over this as well. The rest of the scouting department really deserves a lot of credit in this. And I don't know. Joe didn't say if he went over to China. He said Sergey and Mike went over there. And other scouts are involved in this. This is a team effort. They've been working on this for 2 years. They put a lot of resources into this guy. This wasn't a we'll see if he's available and if we're going into the draft. This is our guy. We're going to figure out how to get him as late as we can and at draft capital. The pick that they got from Memphis is an unprotected first-round pick from the Magic in 2028. Now, the Magic are projecting to be a good team in 2028, but you never know. If somebody gets hurt or things hit the fan, you never know how that's going to work out. So that is... And, the second-round picks, they're not inconsequential. They have a little more value than they used to in some ways. But really, you get an additional unprotected first-round pick in 3 years? That's currency right there.
Don't you think a lot of the people who are uncertain about the pick or don't like the pick that was selected by the Blazers last night is just because of the unfamiliarity? Like, you don't know who Young Hansen is, so it's like you're not expecting it. You don't know who he is, so you're like, what's going on here?
Well, you think about any of the – not any, that's not fair. A lot of the foreign-born players who didn't play college basketball in the United States. Like Jakob is a guy who's from Lithuania, but he played at Illinois. There are guys like that. Jakob Pertl. There are a number of players who are international players, Demon, who have played collegiate ball stateside. But a lot of these guys, with the exception of Luka Doncic, right? Because when Luka Doncic was up there, he was expected to be really good. Maybe not as good as he has been, because he has been an unbelievable player. Well, whatever you want to say about him, he's been an unbelievable basketball player.
Yep.
Andrea Bargnani, number 1 pick overall. But a lot of these guys that aren't the number 1 player outside of the United States, you don't hear a lot about them. People thought it was a reach when the Bucks took Giannis Antetokounmpo in, what year was that, 2014? Yeah, no, 2013. It was the same year that CJ was drafted. I was at that draft. I should know. But people thought that was a reach if they took him. I think it was a 14. It took him a few years to develop. So a lot of these guys that are coming over, and some of them don't pan out. I can't even remember who was the guy that the Bucks took out of China about 10 years ago. And then there was Yi. Or was that Yi? I'm not sure. There's only been a couple of them. But those guys didn't pan out, so they're forgettable. And we hear about, Ha-Sung Jin. Ha-Sung Jin was a second-round pick, right? He was never expected to come in and be maybe a viable NBA player, maybe at best a role player, but he didn't pan out. So because nobody has really heard of this guy and nobody has seen much of this guy, nobody's watching the Chinese Basketball Association in the United States. People aren't really watching maybe the Olympics, maybe some Euro Cup, FIBA, things like that, but they're not watching the Chinese Basketball Association. There's not name recognition there. Is somebody like, Coward or, Carter or any of these other guys, they have name recognition, and there is scouting reports and film on these guys, and we've watched their college games. We haven't watched him, so I think there's a lot of what, huh? And when you see the mock drafts have him, I think Kerry Eggers mentioned it in the post draft press conference with Joe yesterday that the highest mock draft spot he was selected in was number 35. So there just wasn't a lot out there about it. And then you saw some of the instant reactions. I mean, Jalen Hollinger's reaction about this was, like the Titanic just sunk. He was shocked and thought it was a terrible move. Pretty sure there was a WTF in there. And he doesn't react like that to anything. So to see some of these national people that just had absolutely no earthly idea that this guy was on not just the Blazers' radar, but apparently some other teams' radar as well. This doesn't happen in this age of communication and technology. Nobody flies under the radar like that.
I looked it up. It was G who was taken by the Bucks in 07.
Okay. It was number 5 or 6 overall, something like
6.
that?
Yep. Yeah. So you nailed that one. Here's Cronin talking about what the goal was last night.
Yeah, the goal was to get as far back as possible. We didn't want to overdraft if we didn't have to. We weren't much more comfortable beyond 16 than that. So for us, it was too important to get him. We decided to do what some would call a reach. We decided to take that swing and overdraft technically a player that we just really valued. It shows what we thought of him.
Will he be definitely with the club next year, or is it possible that he stays in China for a year?
The plan is to bring him over here next year.
You know what's amazing about that? They had a good feel. They knew that we can go back 5 spots, but they didn't want to go beyond that. And like you mentioned, he might have been scooped up at number 17 had they tried to go down a little bit lower.
Right. And what more were they going to get out of that? They got another unprotected first-round pick. What else are you going to get out of that if you're not exchanging players? It's just the whole thing is fascinating to me, Chad. And you and I have talked about this with the NFL, right? Yeah, there is such a thing as a reach or overdrafting somebody. But if there's a player that you like, go get him. It doesn't matter where he's drafted. Go get him. Unless you know for a fact that you can move down significantly and get that guy. There are benefits to moving down. Price point, right? The 16th pick is going to get paid less than the 11th pick. The 25th pick is going to get paid less than the 16th pick. So there are some implications in there with that, but it's also a guaranteed deal. So like with Brooklyn yesterday, they drafted 5 guys in the first round. Those are guaranteed contracts if they sign. None of those guys can be two-way guys. They all have to be full roster guys. So that means you can only have 10 veterans on your team or 10 guys who've been in the league for more than a year, and they had a couple of first-round picks last year too. So, when you have a situation like this that we just don't know who a guy is, it's a shock to the system because there was zero expectations about this. Nobody really had any information. We see all these numbers, right? But you know what the most impressive number that I saw from him was?
What's that?
35 and a half minutes a game over 41 games this year.
That's awesome. That's good. That's big minutes. There's a lot of things I like about the Trailblazers right now. I love the trajectory of the franchise. Very excited about the 5 young guys that we're excited about. But the brain trust of Joe Cronin and Mike Schmitz, that's what I'm most excited about. Because so far their track record, being in charge, they've made good decisions, Trav. So if they're going to reach on a guy, based on their track record, I trust them.
I do too.
All right, we're going to keep things rolling. What an awesome day it is. Travis Demers is in the studio, and we're going to talk draft. We'll talk Trailblazers. We'll talk about Drew Holiday, who's going to be heading to town. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Travis and I would love to hear your thoughts on the Blazers' decision-making. 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Well, we got to wish a very happy birthday to your son.
Yeah. Lawson. He's
Lawson
turning
shares a
5
birthday
years
with
old.
young Hansen, 5
Yeah.
years old.
5, man.
You just showed me some great pictures and video. They had basketball camp out there in Sherwood?
They did. They had basketball camp the last couple of days out at the elementary school. It was Lawson's first basketball camp. Lincoln's been there a couple of times. They had a great time.
And where does he want to go to dinner for his birthday?
Black Bear Diner.
That's awesome. And I nailed it because I was talking to you yesterday. I said, what's he going to get, pancakes? And you're like,
yeah.
yep.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What do they do? They bear-shaped
Yep.
pancakes?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's the Black Bear Diner. Live radio, folks.
You got to love it. And the best part is when we jumped into a traffic report, when the board kicked into auto there, I knew it was coming, and all of a sudden I heard Shacker yelling obscenities, and I could hear it through the glass. It made me very happy.
Yeah.
But it gives us a chance to wish Lawson a happy birthday again. What's up, Lawson?
Yeah.
5 years
man.
old.
Time flies.
I-
In kindergarten this year.
But, dude, he's a man after my own heart because when I was younger, I used to love going out to restaurants and getting pancakes. I thought it was the best. And then my dad, if we were going to a place that served, like, big pancakes, my dad would always be like, if you can finish all that, I'll give you $10. And I thought, all right, today's the day I'm going to do it. And I could never do it.
You could never do it.
No.
I've always wanted to have, one of those big pancakes from the movie Uncle Buck.
Yeah, huge.
With the giant pat of butter on there.
Oh, my goodness. So those are massive. Have you ever done one of, like, those steak challenges where it's like the 96 ounce or whatever?
No, so I'm not like you, Chad. If there is food in front of me, like I finish it. Period. Like you are very disciplined in your portion sizes. I'm not. If there's food, I will eat it. Even if I'm not hungry anymore. It's there. Oh yeah, I'm going to eat it. It's what I do. It's one of the reasons my weight's all over the place all the time. It's like a 20 pound radius that it range that it fluctuates between. But steak is not something that I've really ever like. If it's there, I'll eat it. But I'm not going to do like the 96 ounce challenge or anything like that.
Yeah, I gotcha. Here's a quote from young Hansen. He said, "Quote: The Blazers had scouts scouting me in China the last couple of years. I also had a pre-workout with them last month. Everything went very well, and I got along with all the front office people. But at the end of the day, this is sort of beyond my wildest imagination." He was shocked too, wasn't he?
I'm sure he was shocked, but there was also a reason why he was there last night. He was just sitting in the crowd. And I haven't seen the video of it. I read the story. So, again, because I haven't seen it with my own eyes, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And I don't know how true it is. But apparently he was just sitting there, and then he heard that he's going to get drafted. So he put his suit on.
Yeah.
And obviously they knew on TV because there was a camera right there waiting. But he's just sitting in the crowd at the Barclays Center.
It's amazing. So how would he know that he might get selected and show up at the draft? Are you tipped off ahead of time?
Probably. Yeah, I'm sure there's some kind of communication there.
Hey, you might want to be there.
Yeah.
There's a possibility you might get taken in the first round.
Yep.
But my guess is, you have an agent, so he's probably telling you, like, hey, I'm hearing, second round, early second round, somewhere in that area. And then all of a sudden you go 16th overall.
I'm sure he had a little bit better idea than, maybe he didn't think it was going to be 16, but I'm sure he had a better idea than going in the early second round.
Well, and based on what we heard last night, maybe the Blazers were the one team that were on him a little bit stronger than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's not like the Blazers were the only one aware of young Hansen, but they were aggressive in their approach.
Yeah, and think about this too, though. It's not like recruiting, okay? It's not like the The big 5-star recruit jumps in the pool with Dan Lanning and then ends up at Texas,
Yeah.
right? It's not like that. He can't change his mind. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you dedicate that much time and resources to a player that you don't think is widely scouted, and then there you are and somebody else takes him, you just, I don't want to say wasted because that's not fair, but you kind of wasted a lot of time and resources to go scout somebody that you believed would have really been the guy. And maybe that's the boat that Minnesota's in right now. So if there are multiple teams that are putting in the same type of resources, somebody's going to miss out. The difference is it's nobody's choice other than yours, right? There's nothing with the player. You're not trying to lure him in or anything like that. So, yeah, you could be on him and do all of these things, and then somebody else drafts him first. It's not like, college sports where, you get on a guy when he's a sophomore in high school before anybody else, and he commits to you when he's in 10th grade, and then when he graduates and it's time for him to, select a school, he goes somewhere else. It's not like that, but you get the same feeling if it doesn't go your way.
Hey, can you reset your thoughts? You mentioned this last night in the broadcast, but in terms of the process of development, you were talking about Nikola Jokic, right?
Yeah.
You have to be patient when you're talking about a young big in the NBA, a guy who just turned 20 years old today. Jokic is widely considered the best player in the world right now. He was taken in the 40s by the Denver Nuggets. No one expected him to be the type of player that he is. How long did that pathway to greatness take for Jokic?
Well, he was drafted in 2014. The Nuggets' first year making the playoffs with him was 18-19. That was the year the Blazers beat them in the 7-game series. And the Nuggets were, they were the 2 seed that year, right? So they had success in year 5, 6, 7, 8? Year 5, right? And then won a championship a few years later. But it was really, it took probably 4 years for him to really be, it wasn't an MVP, it wasn't an all-star, but it took him about 4 years to really be a very good NBA player. And I think he was 19 when he was drafted. And I'm not saying that that's the timeline for Young. I'm not saying that that's exactly how it's going to work out for him. And Blazers fans right now are kind of sick of hearing the word patience.
Yeah.
I get it. They have been sick of that since, let's say, 2019, since the Western Conference Finals run. So the word patience is hard to stomach right now. But if this guy is what Joe Cronin and his staff believe him to be, being patient is going to be a really good thing.
No question. Here's Cronin talking about that timeline for Hansen after the draft last night.
I mean, he's a very capable player. His skill set is very, very advanced for his age. His physical stature, he's mature physically already. He's not a young, gangly guy. Like, he's strong and firm and sturdy and can withstand the strength of these NBA guys to a large extent. There's obviously a lot of work that we can, there's a lot of improvement that can still come as he grows and matures. But, it's going to be an adjustment for every young player coming into this league. It's a whole new thing playing against these guys. These guys are really good. These systems are really intricate. Competition's very steep, both on our roster and the guys we're going to be playing against. So there'll be adjustments for him, just like every other guy drafted tonight. So it's our job to get him there as quickly and as well as possible. It's, player development's critical for us, and I think it's something that we've done really well, and we're excited about this opportunity to, grow him into a good player.
I like that. Joe, very confident.
His body is more NBA ready than the guys who went 1 and 2 in the draft last year.
I agree. Yeah, he looks strong. I saw some of the highlight packages that the Trailblazers put out from his pre-draft workout. I like that he's lean. He looks strong.
Dude, did you see the pictures of him with his shirt off?
Yeah, shredded.
Yeah. He is fit, man. He's not, one of these bigger, pudgy guys. Like, he is strong.
Yeah.
He's not going to get pushed around. I mean, look, if he goes up against Embiid right away, he's going to get tossed aside. But I mean, like, when he figures it out, he is not going to get pushed around.
And you mentioned it a few minutes ago. How many minutes did he average in his season last year?
35 and a half minutes a game in 41 games. The year before, I can't remember what the number of games was. It was 30-something games, but it was right around there. It was 35-plus minutes a night, averaging a double-double, 2.5 blocks. Again, that's in the CBA. What's the competition like? I really don't know. He's not going to come in and do those same things in the NBA. It's completely different competition. But at least there is a track record of him dominating.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. And, they did get the type of player I thought they would go after, someone who was multi-talented and someone that could impact on both ends of the floor. What I'm liking about this team right now, Travis, We were laughing about this the other day. The longest tenured Blazer is who?
Shaden Sharp.
That's amazing to me. But look at how much the team has changed. The overall makeup of the roster and the type of players that they have today with Chauncey Billups, and these players kind of fit his personality. I mean, I like the direction in terms of how they're shaping the overall roster.
Well, they're building this team to be tough, physical, defensive-minded, smart. I was listening to NBA radio yesterday morning, and Antonio Daniels was talking with Rob Perez, and a caller called in and was talking about system this and system that. He stopped him. He said, "It's not system. Okay? It's identity. Does this guy fit their identity? There are very few teams in the league that have an identity. The best teams in the league have an identity. The teams in the middle of the pack don't have an identity. The Blazers are building an identity, and that is a really important thing. Whatever your identity is, you've got to have an identity in this league, and you've got to have players that fit that identity, and that's what they've done."
Well, the great thing is about their defense last year. So what were the numbers in the second half of the season from January 1st till the end of the season? Were they 6th in defensive rating?
So it wasn't January 1st, but it was the second 41 games. So the literal second half of the season, because game 42 against the Bulls, that's when things changed. They were 13-28 in the first 41 games. They were 23-18 in the second 41 games.
Is that when Sharp got benched to send the message?
I believe it was.
Yeah.
And that started their run of 10 of 11 wins. And they were a top 5 defense in the league from that point on in the second half of the year.
That's terrific. Because the way I look at it is now with the addition of Drew Holiday and the young guys continuing on in their process of development in the same system. This is part of the reason why I was a big fan of Chauncey coming back is you have the same system, same focus, and those guys get a chance to continue to grow in that system. So you get the internal development. Like now the way I look at it is like there's no reason why this team can't be a top 10 defense all season. And how much better they're going to be because of that.
I don't see why not. And you think about this too. Okay, so they were 5 games over 500 in the second half. If you put that together, that's 10 games over 500. That's not going to happen. I don't expect them to be a 46-36 team this year. Can they be a 500 team? I absolutely think they can be a 500 team. We don't know what this roster is going to look like.
Yeah.
And in the second half of last year, Jeremy Grant did not play a lot. Anthony Simons was banged up. DeAndre Ayton played part of that time, and he was very effective in the time that he played. Robert Williams III didn't play very much. It was the young core that played well. It was the young core that won games. Now, there were times where Simons had some big games and helped them along the way, and they're going to need some more offense. There's no question they're going to need some more offense. But this young core, Scoot, Shaden, Denny, Tumani, Donovan Clingan, that's the core that played really well in the second half of the year for the most part. So there's no reason why, if that's your starting 5 or if that's your young core, depending on what happens, if the veterans are back, if they're not, whatever happens, there's no reason that that core can't have some level of sustained success. Top 10 defense, their offense right now has a lot of work to do, right? They do. Can Shaden Sharp take that next step now that he doesn't have – there is nobody on the team that is a more talented offensive player than Shaden Sharp. But can he be that guy on a night-in, night-out basis? We don't know. He's got to go take it now. So what does the roster look like? I think they absolutely can be a 500 team right now, depending on what happens with the roster in the next week. Because, as you said, it's the 30th, right? 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock on the 30th.
That's Monday. Monday afternoon, when this show starts, is when all that stuff is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see because I mean, don't you kind of sense that more moves are coming? Or at least that's the attempted goal is to make more moves.
Yeah. I've heard some things, too, about the Blazers potentially buying or trading for a second-round pick tonight. I don't see it. I would be really, really surprised if that happens because think about this, okay? Coming into the offseason, of last year's 15 active roster players, that does not count two-way guys. 13 of those guys were on guaranteed contracts for next year. That does not include Delano Banton. That does not include Jabari Walker. Doesn't mean one of those guys won't be back next year. It just means as of right now, they do not have a guaranteed contract. You draft Young last night. Now you've got 14. If you draft a player tonight, if you trade in or buy a second-round pick, that's 15. Now that player could be a two-way guy, But if you draft a player in the second round tonight and give him a full roster contract next year, if you have no room to sign anybody in free agency unless you make an unbalanced trade, send out 2, get 1 back. But now if you do an unbalanced trade the other way and send out 1 and get 2 back, which I think is more likely, now you have to waive somebody, and that costs money.
Potentially with more moves coming. With the roster the way it is right now, do you anticipate Scoot, Shaden, Klingon, Denny, and Tamani being the starters?
I think there's a pretty darn good chance that's your starting 5. Now, again, if DeAndre Ayton is back next year, and I do want to say this too, though, because this is a really important thing, because when we're sitting up here talking and fans are on social media or whatever that they're doing, it dehumanizes the players. And one of the very first things that Joe Cronin said, even I think he was the interim general manager at this point. We had these conference calls, these Zoom calls at the time, with Joe and the broadcast and support staff, digital, content, all those people. And he said, look, I don't want to talk about these guys as contracts. They're not. They're people. And when we talk about them as contracts, it's disrespectful and dehumanizes them. And yes, that's part of what comes with the territory, right? So when we talk about a player that could potentially be on the trading block like that, sometimes I have a hard time with it that way, because I know these guys now, right? And it's until I started being around the team every day, I didn't quite get it, but now I do in a different way. But with DeAndre Ayton, as of right now, today, he's going to be back next year. I believe if DeAndre Ayton is on the roster next year, he will start at center. I could be wrong.
I do too. Yeah, if Ayton's on the roster, he'll start, and then Klingon would be the backup.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know about Jeremy Grant. I don't know if he's going to be on the roster next year, and I don't know if he's on the roster next year if he's going to start. If Drew Holiday comes off the bench again with the reported trade, now you have a lot of money. 2 of your highest paid guys coming off the bench if it's Jeremy Grant and Drew Holiday coming off the bench in that context. So I think it's really difficult to say this guy's going to start, that guy's going to come off the bench until we know what the roster looks like.
And then I would assume if you end up trading Jeremy Grant, like they're going to need more depth at the forward spot at that point, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they absolutely are. They're going to.
Who do you have after that? But Jabari Walker and Chris Murray?
Jabari's not on the roster right now.
Oh, that's right.
I got to see exactly how that works out. He does not have a guaranteed contract for next year.
Yeah, so they're going to need depth. But you and I have talked about this. If they end up trading Grant, I mean, my hope is maybe they can get 2 players, for 1.
Yeah, but you got to get some offense too, because look, I know Jeremy had a rough year last year, and shooting inside the arc and especially around the rim and in the paint, it was one of his worst years, if not his worst year. But he was still a really good three-point shooter.
Yeah, he's been up, around 40% the last couple of years?
Yeah, last year he was a bit lower than that. Tumani Kamara had the best three-point percentage in the team last year, which is awesome. I love that. But you're potentially losing 2 of your best three-point shooters if you move Jeremy Grant. So you've got to replace that in one way or another.
Where was Tumani, like right around 38 or just under that?
I think it was Ant was at 36.1.
Yeah.
So I think he was right around there. I'll have to look it up.
That's great. For a guy that did not want to be known as just a defensive stopper and a liability on offense, he went to work and put in the time and improved his three-point shooting dramatically.
Let's see. I got it right here. That's last 5 games. Here we go. Per game last year. 3-point percentage. Oh, I was wrong. It was 37.5 last year.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
That's really good.
That's really good.
After 33.7 in his rookie year.
He really put in the time.
Yeah.
That's what Joe Cronin's talking about with the player development, right? These guys putting in the time and showing improvement year to year.
Year 1, 2.5 3-point attempts per game, 33.7%. Year 2, 4.6 attempts per game, 37.5%.
Gosh, that's great. All right, Travis Demers in studio. We're just hanging out, Rip City Drive. It feels like days of old, which is a good thing. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Now, this brings back memories, Trav. One of the cheesiest yacht rock songs of all time from
Yeah.
Rupert Holmes.
Might be the worst song of all time. Like, it definitely rivals We Built This City.
It's funny when you talk to rock artists, they all acknowledge that We Built This City is probably the worst of the worst.
This is worse. Was it like, well, maybe We Built This City is the worst hit of all time.
Because it was
right?
a smash hit.
It was. Was this a hit? It's before my time, but I obviously know the song.
Well, not as big as Escape, but this was a moderate hit for Rupert.
Okay.
Moderate.
It's terrible.
It's bad. All right. This is good news, Trav. Canzano put this out. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek has signed SB 110. It clears $800 million in bond dollars for a potential MLB stadium. Big day for the Portland Diamond Project and Major League Baseball to Portland.
Yeah, I hope it works. $800 million is not enough. Right? You look at the cost of stadiums these days, it's a couple billion. You're going to need a retractable roof. There's going to need to be infrastructure, all that stuff put in. $800 million is a great start. I would love to see Major League Baseball in this city.
Did you like the renderings of the proposed
Yeah,
stadium?
it's awesome, man. Like, I would love to take my kids out there.
So would I. That'd be great. So you're going to head back to New York this summer?
Yep, last week in July. Going to go see my parents.
Nice. You have to go check a Yankee game.
Yeah, that Friday night, I think they're playing the Phillies.
That's a win.
Yeah. And my buddy Matt, who is he's the radio engineer for the Yankees, I'm going to see if he can get me a couple credentials so I can take my dad up to the press box. He's never been in a press box of any kind anywhere before. You know, to us, it's no big deal because we do it all the time. But I want to see his reaction if we go up there and he, like, walks by David Cohn or Paul O'Neill, who are on the broadcast crew now.
Oh, that'd be so awesome. It's amazing, the Major League standings right now. Yankees atop the East with 46 wins. Somehow Tampa Bay's got 46 wins. How about the Detroit Tigers at 51-31 right now?
They've been really, really good. Now, the Yankees have been bad of late. I mean, they finally, they avoided the sweep yesterday, but they blew a couple of games in that series against Cincinnati. Because they had such a great start to the year, it allowed them to go through a little bit of a slide, and you hope that they figure it out here sooner rather than later. Their bullpen's been a mess.
Astros surprising this year, 48-33. They're now up 6 games on the Mariners in the West.
Yeah, we'll see how sustainable it is.
Mets and Phillies are tied atop the NL East. How about the Cubs? 48 wins.
Yeah.
They've been on fire this year.
Yeah, that's been surprising.
Are you surprised by their success?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, the NL Central, I'm surprised by the Cubs. I am surprised that the Cardinals are not a dumpster fire. Like, they're still in the wild card right now. And Milwaukee, I expected to be pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it's pre-All-Star break, so you still got a long, long way to go.
And right now in the NL West, Dodgers, Padres, Giants separated by 6.5 games.
Yeah. By the way, Dodgers, Padres right now, the last couple of years, it's amazing. I love it.
The hatred between those two squads is fabulous. I really enjoy it. Who's that ace for the Tigers?
Tarek Skubal.
Gosh.
He's filthy.
I mean, I watch his stuff, and I'm just like, how can he get that type of movement on the baseball? Now I'm worried about his elbow like I am every other pitcher. I'm like, gosh.
You see that the Brewers rookie pitcher who outdueled Skeens the other day?
Yes.
And I hadn't seen much of him until I saw the highlights of that. His breaking stuff is filthy, man. It is disgusting.
Do you think Skeens is the best in ball right now? Or is it Skubal?
I mean,
or is it somebody else?
They're both pretty good. I mean, DeGrom is still good. His injuries over the last few years have, kind of taken him out of people's minds. But,
yeah, when he's healthy, he's one of the best.
Yeah, I mean, he had his longest start without giving up a hit the other night. He took a no-hitter into the 7th. First time in his career he's done that. Yeah, I mean, those guys are good. They're all really good.
Juan Soto annoys me now. Does he annoy you?
Oh, forget that guy. I might use a different word, but forget that guy.
Yeah,
he can have his suite.
Yeah, screw that guy. Also, it's cool, man. Your mom and dad are coming out.
Yeah.
I want to meet your mom and dad face to face. Can you make that happen for me?
Yeah, I'm sure you can make. You have a car?
Yes.
We can make it happen.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just would love to get a chance to see them, and I'm sure they'll be excited to see the boys, which is great. But I'm glad they're coming out. And it's a great time of the year to come out because the weather is, usually this time of year is spectacular.
It's hot.
It's going to be warm. But it's muggy. It'll be warm in New York, too, right? Hot and muggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the humidity. That's one of the good
I grew
things
up
about
with it, so I don't mind it that much. It feels like home, but I'd prefer it like it is here.
All right. You've had a few days to process the Drew Holiday trade.
Yeah.
Like, where are you at now? Like, what are some of the things that come to your mind?
Let me preface this. The reported trade.
That's right. The reported trade between the
trade.
Blazers and the Celtics for Drew Holiday.
I really like it. I think there are a lot of really, really positive things about it, right? You lose some offense with Anthony Simons. What was Anthony Simons great at? Shooting.
Yeah.
He could get to the rim. Believe it or not, he's one of the best free throw shooters in the history of the NBA. He is an unbelievable free throw
Was
shooter.
he like 91%?
Yeah, in that ballpark. I
Yeah.
think he's top 10 in the history of the league in terms of free throw percentage. And he did a pretty good job at times getting to the rim. He could finish at the rim, create his own shot. There were a lot of really good things he did offensively. He wasn't the kind of guy that's going to make his teammates better. There were some games he had 7, 8, 9 assists, but that was certainly not his game. Like, that's not his style, right? And that's fine. His best role on a really good NBA team is sixth man. We've all known that, but that he couldn't be that on this team. So he gets a fresh start where he's not going to be relied on to be the guy. And I think that's perfect for him. I think Boston is a perfect place for him. For the Blazers, what do you get back? You get back a guy who, by all accounts, is as good of a human being as there is in the league.
I've never heard anyone say anything bad about him.
Yeah. He's as good as it gets. And why am I starting with that? Because really that's where everything starts with him. The reports that he's not happy about being traded to Portland. Let's be real here for a minute, Chad. You go from Boston, where you have been a title contender when you've been there. You've won championships there. To the Northwest, where we are tucked away by ourselves up here and are not a championship contender right now. It's a big difference. Now, he's a West Coast guy. He's from L.A. Oh, good Lord. Does that mean we're at time to go?
I think it's that time. This right here. Now, this is a bad song.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have done this.
Can we finish this conversation at the top of the
I
hour
want to
so I don't
finish
have
at
to
the
rush
top.
through it? Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, if you and I played for the Kansas City Chiefs and we were suddenly shipped out to Carolina to the Panthers.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, I'm not going to be okay with that.
No.
But it doesn't mean I'm not going to show up and do my job.
Right. He's as professional as it gets in the league. I don't know if he's unhappy or not. That's just the report. But because of who he is, I wouldn't be worried about him one bit.
All right. Thank you, Shacker. I appreciate that. Shacker, do you agree that this is a bad song?
It's a great song. I love it.
All right. We'll keep things rolling. Travis Demers hanging out for another hour in studio. 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, what's up, my friends? It's now 4 o'clock chat here. We start with the NBA draft where your Portland Trailblazers, in a surprise move, traded back 5 spots with the Grizzlies to take 7-1 center from China, Young Hansen. After the draft, Joe Cronin was asked if Chinese Jokic is a fitting nickname.
Nobody's Jokic. That's a tough one. You know, that's a big shoes to fill. But as far as, you know, his ability to pass the ball, there's not too many his size that can do it like he does.
Yeah, the Blazers also collecting assets along the way. They got a 2028 first-round pick and 2 future seconds. Second round of the draft at 5 o'clock today on ESPN. The Blazers do not own a second-round pick. The free agency period will kick off in the NBA June 30th. That's coming up on Monday at 3 o'clock Portland time. Former Ravens kicker Justin Tucker suspended for 10 weeks for violating the league's conduct policy. Travis Demers in studio. More of the Rip City Drive coming at you right now. All right, this song was just released, Travis, and Shacker played it for me yesterday. I wanted you to hear it, but Dolly Parton, one of my favorites, showing her versatility on the remake there with the crew.
That's actually pretty damn good.
Yeah.
The Vince Neil Dolly Parton duet is something I never thought I would hear in my life.
I know, and we're getting a lot of this now where you're seeing artists that will kind of do that mix mash where they combine and work together.
Yeah.
I'm kind of into that. You said Darius Rucker's doing a Metallica song?
Well, so this was a few years ago. There was a whole album that came out. There was like 15 versions of different songs, or like 15 versions of Nothing Else Matters. There was a Darius Rucker version, a Chris Stapleton version, a Miley Cyrus version. They were all different. They were all really cool.
Wasn't it you? Didn't you have like lullabies for your boys when they were younger?
Oh,
They were
yeah.
like rock lullabies?
Yeah, it was called, was it Rockabye Baby, I think it was. But it wasn't just like, it wasn't rock. It was just rock. It was like there was like a Taylor Swift lullaby album. There was a Metallica, The Doors. There was an Ice Cube lullaby album. There was everything. It was awesome.
That's great, man. It's a good way to expose them to that type of music, but in a softer form when you're trying to get them to sleep at night.
Shockingly, the Pink Floyd one is what put Lincoln to sleep.
Oh, the Pink Floyd?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Just think of the lullaby version of Us and Them, and that would definitely put you to sleep.
What do they like now before they go to bed to fall asleep? Do you read to them, or what's their thing?
Yeah, when they're with me, like our routine. So at their mom's house, they have bunk beds, and at my house, they have their own rooms. Since some things have changed, obviously, Lincoln is fine sleeping in his own room, but Lawson doesn't want to, so he sleeps in Lincoln's room. And I think this weekend we're going to try and get him to go back into his own room.
I'm sure Lincoln appreciates that.
Yeah, he sometimes likes to have Lawson sleep in there with him. But we'll do a book, or they each get to pick a book, and we read a book together, the three of us, and then they have these little. They're called Yodo players, and there's they're little story cards that you put in there, and all different kinds of stuff. Like everything like mainstream that could be marketed and sold and things like that to like just bedtime stories. And they like to listen to those.
That's pretty cool. My buddy Luke got me started on something that I didn't even know about until he mentioned it, but he and his wife have been doing it for years. But there's this company that makes these cards. They're like conversation cards. And they can be like serious topics, funny topics, goofy topics, whatever. But you pull out the card and it comes up with different topics for you to start to discuss. And then some of them you try to guess what the other person would do in certain situations. Sometimes you're just talking about particular topics. But I've started doing that with Kaylee and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I found that I learned things about my daughter by having the conversation card, which I think is pretty
That's
fascinating.
really cool.
Yeah, so it's might be something you want to think about with the boys because you come across certain things where you're like, wow, like Luke was telling me like he went up to Montana for a Spartan race this past weekend, and so he and his son were doing conversation cards, and one came up about what you wanted to do in the future, and Luke didn't even think his son had it mapped out, but he did. He wanted to be a vet, and then he found out that there's different type of vets that you can be in terms of large animals, small animals, and so he was breaking it all down, and Luke was like, this is my son, and I had no idea that he already had all this mapped out and stuff, so it's pretty interesting.
That's really cool.
All right, Travis Demers is in studio. The Blazers last night surprising a lot of people with their trade back to number 16 with Memphis, where they select 7-1 center from China, Young Hansen, who's going to be introduced in Portland tomorrow, which is pretty cool. And
Saturday.
Is it Saturday?
Saturday.
I thought it was tomorrow. The press conference is
Saturday.
Oh, it's Saturday.
Yeah. I think so. I hope so. Better be. That's what I've got planned.
Oh, okay. Well, I was off on my days then. What is today? Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Saturday then. So he's going to be introduced. I mean, where was the draft? What town was the draft in last night?
New York. So it's been at the Barclays Center for the last, 13, 14 years.
All right, cool. So I can't imagine what it's like for a guy to be to play in China, be from China, and then I've always respected guys who are international players who come over to the U.S. So you're learning a new language, you're learning how to live in a brand new area, and you're trying to absorb a different style of game in terms of the NBA. Like that is a big process. That's why I really enjoyed all the details that Joe went into in terms of what they'll have to do as an organization to make sure that they can help him get up to speed and get comfortable.
Well, just think about what it would be like for you if you were to go play basketball or do your job in China.
Oh, I'd be freaked out.
Not just you, but anybody listening, okay? Basically by yourself, maybe your parents, or I don't know what his family life is like. I don't know if his parents are still alive or who's close to him, what the people around him are like, but hopefully he'll have somebody other than just an interpreter to come with him and help him with the transition. You want to have more people like you that can help you with the transition. It's tough. You feel alienated when you're by yourself and there's a language gap and things like that. And now, not just that, but now there's all of this expectation on you. So to manage all of those things for a guy who's literally turning 20 years old today, that's a lot. So I wouldn't expect anything immediate with him, and that's okay.
All right, we were derailed by We Built This City, but we were talking about Drew Holiday, and you were just starting to get into some of the different attributes, talents that he brings to this team and this franchise.
Yeah, and look, has he lost a step at 35 years old? Yeah. Of course he has. But the step that he's lost, he's still a very good player. I mean, keep in mind, he started every game he played last year for a team that believed they were a championship-level team, and until injuries, they were, the Boston Celtics. He's a career, 37% three-point shooter, shot 35% last year. Okay, 11 points. I don't really care much about the numbers, right? That's great, but it doesn't matter. He's going to be a role player on this team. Again, reported trade. Can get that out there. So he'll be a role player on this team. And I don't want to discount what he can do on the floor by highlighting the other reasons that he's going to be really important here. But I think what's as important as anything is the veteran leadership, right? And I was talking about this with Francis last night on our Blazers broadcasting coverage about the differences between hearing something from a coach and hearing something from a teammate. And he knows a lot better than I. And what he was saying about hearing something from a different voice and, somebody who can physically show you in games and practices, things like that. If anybody has ever tried coaching their children in any kind of sport, you know what it's like when your kids don't want to listen to you. Hearing something from a different voice that's not your coach or your dad, it makes a big difference and it goes a long way. This team has been hearing the same thing from Chauncey Billups for the last couple of years. Drew Holiday can come in and say the same thing, and it's going to hit different. That's really important. This team has really sorely lacked that veteran leader. And it's not just, he's going to come in and mentor Scoot. It's not just that. Is that part of the equation? I'm sure it is, and I hope it is. Look at what Chris Paul did for the Phoenix Suns. He was still more in his prime, but even though a lot of people thought he wasn't, he goes into Phoenix, a team that had not made the playoffs in years, that had been a disaster for about a decade. They were a decent team the year before, very young. Went 8-0 in the bubble, did not make the playoffs. He comes in, they go to the finals. Look at what he's done in San Antonio. Wherever he is this year, he's going to have a positive impact. The young guys collectively need a veteran presence around. They have not had that voice. Malcolm Brogdon was to a degree a couple of years ago, but they didn't have that last year. Jeremy Grant is a great dude. He's an awesome guy, but that's not who he is. He's not that guy. Drew Holiday is that guy. He's a phenomenal leader. He's won 2 championships on 2 different teams. There's a reason why when he left Milwaukee, everything kind of went to hell. There's a reason why when he got to Boston, it put them over the edge and they won a championship. He's that kind of guy. And he's the kind of guy that, they'll teach a man to fish, right? His presence around this team, whether it's 1 year, half a year, 2 years, the remainder of his contract, I think is going to be so immeasurable in terms of the growth for these guys that they're going to look back at having him around in 10 years and say, man, that dude really helped us.
To build off what you're saying there, I'll use a baseball example. The one thing I could never understand is why the Braves would let Freddie Freeman go, and now he's with the Dodgers, right? And what I was told about Atlanta, that guys like Freddie Freeman, much like what you're mentioning with Drew Holiday, that you talk about that different voice. Freddie Freeman was the guy in the clubhouse where young guys would come in, and instead of the manager having to say everything, guys like Freddie would pull along the young guys and be like, hey, that's not how we do things here in Atlanta. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
And the players would listen to them because it's like, okay, I know your track record. I know your history. You're one of the greats. I'm going to respect you, and you follow in line, which is great. And that's Drew Holiday. His reputation precedes him. People know what he's about.
Look, the word culture in sports gets so overblown and so exaggerated. I know here in Portland, especially the last couple of years, the term heat culture makes people want to barf.
Yeah.
Me too. Okay, it makes me a little sick.
They even have it on the court for crying
on
out
their
loud.
jerseys.
Yeah.
But it's a real thing. There's a reason why whoever the Heat have, when Jimmy Butler is not screwing things up, they have some level of success. They bring in guys that are two-way players. They end up earning big contracts, things like that. There is a reason why the New England Patriots for so many years were able to get the most out of guys who had checkered pasts because there was an identity. There was a culture. The Blazers are getting there. And bringing in somebody like Drew Holiday, who has been on championship teams and has been part of a championship culture in more than one place, it's going to go so far in helping this team eventually be who they are.
Speaking of heat culture, how do you pronounce his name, Travis? Is it Kasparas?
Kasparas Yakuchonis.
How did the Heat do nothing and get him at number 20?
Okay, so I don't think it's a great pick for him, for them.
You don't think so?
Plays no defense. How's that going to work under Eric Spoelstra? He's creative, man. He is crafty. He can score. That's why I didn't want the Blazers to draft him, because he doesn't play a lick of defense. When he's out there, that's the guy we're going after. Okay.
That's one thing I'm out on. I only want two-way players now. Like, I love the roster that Portland's putting together. And after watching Indiana and Oklahoma City, like, I just want a litter of guys who just play both ways.
Yep.
Defensive-minded. And if they're a top 10 defense throughout the entire season, I'll be smiling ear to ear.
Yeah.
Because you can do a lot of good things when you play good defense. And I love versatility, too, with guys, like freaking Tamani Kamara, Denny Avdia, and now Drew Holiday.
Sign me up, man.
Gosh, I love
it.
Matisse Thybulle. We forget about him. Matisse is a nasty defender.
Yeah, just think about the final 5 seconds of a game. The other team has the ball down by 1.
What's
and
the
they
lineup?
roll out. Oh, man. I guess it depends on who, but you'd probably have Drew, Tease, Klingon, probably Klingon in the middle, maybe Ayton, Kamara.
And Denny.
Denny.
That's 5 guys. That's not really a weakness on the floor defensively.
No.
Those are all guys who are willing defenders.
Yeah.
Gosh, like you said, sign me up for that. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Travis Demers, the voice of your Trailblazers, hanging out with me in the studio. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, we got the days cleared up. Young Hansen will be introduced tomorrow at the practice facility at 10 o'clock. Travis Demers in the studio. You got the Rip City Drive as we recap the NBA draft. Aside from the Trailblazers, was there anything else that jumped out at you in the first round that caught your eye?
Oh, the Ace Bailey situation was interesting, right? Because by a lot of accounts, he was the third best player in the draft. And all the stuff that happened with him, and, we don't know him, right? Again, talking with Francis Williams yesterday, he knows a lot of people and knows a lot of people who know Ace Bailey. None of this stuff was him. It was all his handlers, his agent, things like that. Kid just wants to play ball. Reportedly didn't want to go to Utah. I've seen a number of reports saying he's definitely not going to the Jazz. They are definitely not taking him. The Jazz took him at 5. So, what happens there? I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I applaud Danny Ainge where they saw a player they get great value in that spot. They were a team that tanked and missed out on the first pick. So to sit where they were sitting and get Ace Bailey, and like you said, you can draft whoever you want, even if the player's trying to play a power pool and say, I don't want to play there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to draft you anyways. You can come and play, and then we'll see how things work out.
Yep. So
And it could be used as a future piece, too.
100%. Yeah. And look, sometimes it works in the player's advantage. Steve Francis gets moved, right? It happens sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. And players don't want to go to a certain place. They end up there, and it works out. Or it works out for a time, and then it eventually doesn't work out. There are some people, no matter where they go, it's not going to work out. And then they'll go somewhere else, and it'll start great, and it won't work out there. And then the next place, and then the next place. And then you end up with the Warriors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're kind of discarded. That's why it was so surprising to me when Kyrie Irving went to Dallas.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to work.
I didn't either. I thought it was going to be a total disaster. And it was for the first few months there. It was awful. And then he and Luka figured it out. If you'd have told me when that trade was made that Kyrie was going to be there longer than Luka, did he die?
Yeah, and he just signed an extension.
Yeah, but why would Kyrie be there longer than Luka? I would not have expected that.
Do you like Cooper Flag landing? Do you think it's better for Cooper to land with a team like Dallas with veteran star power, where he's not expected to be the guy right away and he can kind of blend in?
Yeah,
More so than going to a team where he's the guy right away.
Well, yeah, for a number of reasons. Right. So that's a team that already has 2 Hall of Famers on it. Obviously, Kyrie isn't going to play for a while. Is he going to be back in January, March, whatever it is? But Anthony Davis is still there. He's a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any question Anthony Davis is a Hall of Famer. You have other very good players on that team. Derek Lively, Gafford, P.J. Washington. There are a number of really good players on that team. So to put him in that spot where the spotlight is going to be on him. Okay, the Mavericks are playing on Christmas this year, and probably a primetime game. The spotlight is on him, but they're not on him to be the only guy. So if they win, and Anthony Davis has 32, and Cooper Flag goes 3 for 13 and scores 7 points, is that possible? Yeah, 3 for 13 and has 7 points and 4 turnovers. It's not going to be a big deal because they will have won the game, or they have other players on that team. If he ended up in a place like Washington, where they have some other young players now, but he was the focal point.
Yeah,
there's so much more pressure on him. And the other part of that too is that for a team building, you're trying to get the guy. Well, you've already got a pretty good team, and you add him to that mix. It makes it better for everybody.
Yeah, what I like about Cooper Flag too, I look at him a lot like Paolo Banchero, where even if he has a night where he's not shooting the ball well or struggling on offense, the rebounding, the defense, the playmaking, he does so many things well out there on the basketball floor that he's going to make the guys around him better.
And I think he's going to be the youngest player in the league too, if not close to it. He doesn't turn 18 or 19 until December.
He could still be in high school.
Yeah. Well, he reclassified. This was supposed to be his freshman year of college coming up.
Yeah.
But he reclassified and went to college a year earlier than he was originally supposed to.
I'm excited to see him play. I like him. I like his makeup. I like the way he handles himself, and I like the fact that, John Shire was able to coach hard. He wrote him hard, and Cooper took it in stride. no prima donna type stuff. Just like,
Yep.
yes, sir, no, sir.
He was also very clearly the best player on that team.
There's no question. So I still can't believe, like, it's hard. I don't think it's getting enough attention. The fact that Dallas got the number 1 pick is amazing. Like, they trade Luka. They only get 1 first-round pick in return for that. They get Anthony Davis. He gets hurt in the first game with Dallas. And then with less than a 2% chance of landing the top pick, they get the top pick.
Yeah.
That is a wild ride.
It is.
It's unbelievable.
Math, right?
Gosh.
Probabilities.
Yeah, it's
or something.
Yeah, or something. But no, it's going to be fun to watch him play. I like him. But you know what's funny about the draft? You know, people that complain about, you know, the Blazers doing this or other teams doing that. There's only one player in this draft that I'm convinced is going to be legit, and that's Cooper Flagg. Everyone else is like, I don't know.
Right. And there are some drafts where there's nobody like that.
You're right.
Last year was one of them.
Like VJ Edgecombe, I watched him play in college a little bit. He looks good, but I don't know if he's going to be a star.
Yeah, I don't either. I didn't watch him play a ton. The last couple of years, so I used to be a college basketball junkie and watch it as much as I could. Loved it. The last couple of years, I just haven't watched a whole lot of it. So there's some guys that I just don't have a great opinion on right now. VJ Edgecombe is one of them.
Wow. What the other thing that surprised me, just with the stupidity, but you know, the Brooklyn Nets, they draft like 5 guards. Like, what was Francis' reaction to what they were doing?
I think it was just the fact that they had 5 first-round picks. Demon is supposed to be super athletic and, you know, super fun. He can do a lot of things, but
what's his timeline? It's going to take him a bit too, probably.
Yeah. I mean, again, they had 5 first-round picks for a team that was terrible last year and is going to be terrible again this year. They're the first team ever to actually use 5 first-round picks in one draft. I mean, they've got a long way to go.
All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Let's go out to the phones. We'll start in Hermiston. It's Pat. Hey, Pat, welcome to the Rip City Drive. Travis and Chad, what's up?
Hey, enjoyed you guys both for quite a while. I'm kind of in the camp. There's no win-now player in the NBA draft anymore, if there ever was. I mean, you look at Wemby. This is coming into his 3rd year. Maybe they'll be competitive this year. I think they will. They'll be possibly contenders. So I'm kind of okay with the Blazers, you know, swinging for the fences on this if they really believe in this player. And then with the Drew Holiday, I think they're just going to be better and more entertaining. There are some statistics that show that the net rating of Ant off the floor versus on the floor is better. And so I like Ant a lot. I enjoy his game, but he just wasn't a good fit. And, he's got a lot of offense, but over the course of the season, it kind of shows that the Blazers were more competitive with him off the floor, which, in spite of all of his talent, kind of shows that he was just a bad fit. And at the guard position, the 2 guard positions, there's 96 minutes to split. That's over 30 minutes for each player. And then when you count injuries and personal time off or whatever, I'm not too worried about enough playing time for those 3 guards. So those are kind of my thoughts.
All right, appreciate that. You know, the one thing I'm looking forward to, Trav, is like you mentioned with Anthony being moved out, he's in Boston. It's going to give more time for Scoot to play. But the one thing that no one talks about, the Blazers were really happy with Scoot's effort and improvement defensively over the second half of the season.
Yeah, especially the last 30 games or so. But to Pat's point about Anthony Simons not being a fit, he wasn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means on this team, he wasn't the right guy for this team to go where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that's why they're making a move. And I think he's absolutely right about that point. And his other point about there's 96 minutes we had the exact same conversation off air a couple days ago. There are plenty of minutes. So the idea that, you know, Drew Holiday comes in and is going to take minutes. No, those guys can't play 48 minutes a night. There are plenty of minutes to go around.
Yeah, if Holiday doesn't start, he's going to get plenty of minutes.
Yeah.
He'll play as much as he wants. And Chauncey will play him. But the way I saw it initially when I saw the deal, I was like, okay, good. That clears the pathway now. It's Scoot and Shaden.
They are very clearly putting everything into, as far as the point guard position, Scoot Henderson as the point guard of the future of this team. There is no question. He's not looking over his shoulder. He was looking over his shoulder with Anthony. He was looking over his shoulder the last couple of years. He is not looking over his shoulder anymore.
I agree. Let's go out to Salem. David, appreciate the phone call. You're up on the Rip City Drive. What's your take on what went down in the draft last night?
I'm undecided. I looked at all the reviews of this guy, and I even looked at, Hoops Hype and looked at all the centers and power forwards, because that's what I was hoping they would draft, as a center or a power forward. So he was a little bit off my radar. I looked at his film and everything like that. But one thing I don't know a lot about is the fact of this league that he played in. How does that rank with other leagues around the world? The only other Chinese player that I ever remember that came and really had some success, apart from his later career injuries, was Yao Ming. And this guy isn't Yao Ming. Obviously, he's quite a bit younger. What I don't know is at the 11 pick, how good a player he could have been. I looked at Asa Newell and some of those other players that I thought had a lot of experience, and I thought, well, maybe they're going to go for a power forward, because that's kind of what I hoped they were going for. So a little bit disappointed, but it's an unknown. And then bringing in Drew Holiday, an old 35-year-old player, that concerns me, because Anthony Simons was 26. I think I talked to you about that the other day. And where are they going to get the scoring from? That's another thing. And then the salary cap.
The salary cap in this situation, Dave, it's irrelevant, because the five guys that you're building around, they are young, they are inexpensive. Bringing in Drew Holiday for his contract doesn't affect anything in any way. This franchise has never brought in big-time free agents.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't affect anything at all. I'm not concerned one bit over the money that Drew Holiday is making. It really doesn't affect anything at all. In terms of being undecided, I think that's where all of us are.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know who this guy is going to be. Yao Ming was 27 years old when he came to the NBA. He just turned 20 today. There's so many unknowns about this guy. Yao Ming was ready to go on day one. Yang is not. And for the other part of that question, I really have no idea what the comparison is for the CBA. We just haven't seen enough of players from that league coming over to this league.
Yeah, and David's right about one thing. Through the evaluation process from fans and experts over the next 3 or 4 years, Hanson's going to be compared to the players that were available at 16. Asa Newell and the rest of the group. Guys they could have had. He'll be compared to that. That should be a part of the process. It's going to be fun to see how all that plays out.
Yeah.
All right, I need you to do me a favor right now.
Okay.
If you were going to pretend to be Mitch in New Jersey.
No, I'm not.
No. Listen to me. If you were to give me a quick Mitch in New Jersey, like if you were to try and assume what Mitch might say about the draft last night, how would he say that?
Oh man. Don't do that to me on the
do
spot,
it.
Chad.
Yes, you can do this.
No,
you are capable of doing this. You cannot disappoint me.
When was the last time I sat in here?
Yeah.
It's been a while, and you're going to spring that on me?
Yeah, like, maybe Ace Bailey not one to play in Utah. or the Mavs getting to select Cooper Flag.
I hear it in my head. I hear all of those things in my head.
Cooper Flag, let's go out there right now.
Oh, we have Mitch?
Yes.
This is Mitch?
This is Mitch.
The real Mitch.
The real Mitch. What's up, real Mitch?
Good morning, Rolly. How you guys doing?
Hey, Mitch. Mitch, how you doing?
Again?
How you doing, Mitch?
Good. How's it going?
What's going on?
Is Frosty Tucker still playing for the Bengals? Is he still in the NFL?
Who? Frosty Rucker?
Frosty Rucker.
He's been out of the league for like a decade, man.
Remember he called him Frosty Flakes?
Yeah, remember? That wasn't more than 10 years ago. But I wish that Portland had kept Cedric Coward. That is a great last name. He should be a police officer on the side, a sheriff like Shaquille O'Neal. But I thought that was the better. And then next thing you know, they traded him to Memphis.
Yeah.
What else did they get besides Yang Hansen?
They got an unprotected first-round pick from the Magic in 2028 and 2 future second-round picks.
Oh, okay. I knew it had to be something like that. It's always for tomorrow, and you behave before you know. But anyway, I hope your boys are doing well. Paul, looks like they're building some team. And I think you mentioned this a little while ago. The Nets, they drafted 4 guards out of 5 first-round picks. The Nets, they should move them to Seattle or Vegas. They don't know what to do. And they've had Ben Simmons. Well, he's no big deal, but they've had Kevin Durant. They've had Kyle Irvin. I think they had James Harden. And they're still spinning their wheels. I think they're going backwards on the treadmill.
Yeah, they are. They've been doing that for almost 25 years. I mean, look, Mitch, you know what it's like. You've been around that area for a long time. How many actual Nets fans did you know before they started to put some good players in that team like 10 years ago? Even their finals runs. How many Nets fans did you actually know?
Not too many.
Exactly. And you're in New Jersey.
Right. They couldn't hack it in New Jersey. Moved back to finally put a team. They let the wrong team leave Brooklyn. That's still their biggest mistake. I'm going back 60 years, I think. The Dodgers. I'm talking about the Dodgers. That Moses was his name. Biggest mistake in any city, letting that team go.
You talking about Robert Moses?
Robert Moses. I forgot. I'm great with names, as you well know.
Yeah, Robert Moses is not well liked by a lot of people. Well, was not well liked by a lot of people for a lot of reasons, and he did have something to do with the Dodgers leaving, but. Also, if the Giants didn't say, yeah, we'll go with you, the Dodgers never would have left. So you can blame them, too.
Well, the Giants should have stayed there, too. I mean, it's 10 million people in New York. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this draft. I don't see any USC, UCLA guys being taken so far.
There's a reason for that.
You're not kidding. Wait till next year. Forget it. I don't want to talk about that. Well, I'm looking forward to the football team. I think we're going to be in the playoffs at least, the football team. The Trojans fight on, right?
Sure.
I think.
Yeah, good luck with
Dodgers and
that.
Yankees. Dodgers and Yankees in the World Series. I think I've gone around the world with everything.
Yep.
Let me let you take another call. Stay well, be safe, and I wish you come back. Be like Deion Sanders, play 2 sports. I think he a little rougher than you, Travis. I'm just kidding. These actors have plenty of free time. It could be done if they wanted to.
It's good to talk to you, Mitch.
Dude, I love Mitch. And this, by far, is one of my favorite moments in the history of our show together.
Don't do it, Chad. Come on.
We got to do it. This is Travis Demers doing his best Mitch impression. It's spot on.
How many years ago was this?
It's probably like 6-7 years ago. It's a classic. Let's say we go to the phones. We go to Jersey. We bring on Mitch. Give me your best Mitch in Jersey impression.
Hey, Chad. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, Chad. Travis. How you doing? How's the boys? That Justin Turner with my Dodgers. He was what? Come on, I mean, you weren't wearing a mask. You had COVID. What are you doing? And Corey Seager, he should have won the MVP. I'm just saying.
There you go. That's Mitch. You nailed it. I freaking love that. Thank you, Mitch. I needed that. Travis needed that. We appreciate you. All right, Rip City Drive, Travis hanging out up until 5 o'clock, 503-248-0620. Good phone calls. If you would like to share your thoughts on what went down with the draft last night, you can call us right now. Yeah, Men at Work, Toto, and Christopher Cross on tour, which launches here in the very near future. They're going to be up at the amphitheater in Clark County on August 30th. They'll be in Vegas on the 23rd and at the Forum in Los Angeles on the 24th.
Don't forget about those concert tickets I asked you for a couple months ago for October.
Don't worry, I've got a long list. I just had someone reach out yesterday for Wu-Tang Clan.
Nice.
They're going to be at Moda on the 1st of July.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler will be at Moda Center in October.
Doing stand-up?
Yeah.
Do you think the new Happy Gilmore is going to be solid?
I hope so.
I really hope so.
I hope so.
He can't mess that up, man. Like, you can't do a Happy Gilmore 2 and screw it up.
You can't do what Dumb and Dumber did.
Oh, that was bad. All right. Chris Burkhardt gave me a migraine this morning, so you understand these things so well. And this is why you're always going to be my guy. If I ever make it to one of those game shows where I have to have someone I can lean on for all the right information, you're the guy. So, Yang Hansen, like, Hansen's his first name, Yang is his last name, but in China, the surname goes first. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So just think of it's backwards. So on the back of his jersey, it'll say Yang.
Okay.
Just like Yao Ming, it said Yao. Ichiro Suzuki, it said Ichiro.
And when will they pick numbers for the new players?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think he wore 51 in the CBA. I don't know in their culture if, the numbers have any meaning. People here are very superstitious. They like their numbers. I don't know in other cultures if it's the same way.
What number did you wear in baseball?
20.
Why?
Well, so I originally wore number 6 because I loved Steve Sachs, who has been on this show, by the way. And then when I was 11 on our all-star team, they didn't have single-digit numbers. So they just gave me 20. And I was a catcher, and the Yankees catcher at the time was Mike Stanley, and he wore number 20. And I had a great summer, so I always wore number 20.
That's
after
cool.
that. Even in college, actually, I bartered with somebody to get the number. There was a guy his name was Dave Daniels, and they gave him number 20, and they gave me number 29. And we were incoming freshmen, and 20 was my favorite number. 29 was his favorite number because, you remember Cal Daniels?
Yes.
Cal Daniels was his favorite player because they had the same last name. So he switched. I gave him 29. He gave me 20.
What number was Mariano Rivera?
42.
42. That's right. Yeah, I wore number 7 in my younger basketball league as a kid for obvious reasons.
When I played basketball, I wore 4 for Chris Webber.
That's pretty sweet.
Yep.
And that goes back to you mentioned watching college basketball. Yeah. Like, dude, when we were younger, like, Big Mondays on ESPN, but all those players that we grew attached to because they played with their squads in school for an extended period of time, it was awesome. And was that you I was talking about? Did you bring this up? Where it's going to be interesting to see how second-round picks are in the NBA moving in the future because some players may elect to stay longer in the school to make more money.
Yeah, it wasn't us that had that conversation, but that is going to be interesting because second-round draft picks are not guaranteed money, right? They're guaranteed nothing. They're not guaranteed a roster spot. They're not guaranteed money.
Unless you're Bronny James.
Yeah. But some players like Jabari Walker, who was the second to last pick in the draft, drafted in the second round, earned himself a standard contract. A lot of those guys end up being two-way guys, and then if they're good enough, they find their way to a standard deal. But they can get paid more in college, right? But the other thing, too, is some of those guys that are going to say, I don't want to be a second-round pick, I'm going to get paid more in college. Do they really have much of an NBA future anyway? Most second-round picks, at best, are role players. At best.
Yeah.
If they're lucky.
You find the occasional star in the second round, but it's rare.
Like Jalen Wells last year with the Grizzlies. He's a stud. I think he was a second round pick.
The Grizzlies, like when I saw them early in the year, like I was blown away by their young talent.
Yeah.
I saw them in person. I'm like, I just didn't know. But they found, again, I appreciate teams that find diamonds in the rough like that.
New Orleans, Oklahoma City, Memphis, all those teams have been really good at that.
Yeah, man. Oklahoma City especially.
Yeah.
Like how did they've got a couple of guys on their roster that weren't expected to be, like Lou Dort. Was he expected to be a stud?
I think he was undrafted.
Yeah. They scooped him up, and now he's one of the best defenders in the game.
Yeah. And, I mean, you think about some of the other guys at the bottom of their roster last year that were getting minutes. A.J. Mitchell, Dylan Jones. When they played, that team didn't miss a beat.
I mean, Tamani Kamara was a second-round pick, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
That was a great grab by the Blazers. That was a great grab. Yeah, that's where I stand on the drafting of, Hansen. I have no idea what he's going to be, but I do trust Schmitz and Cronin together. Like they've forged a very good partnership in terms of being able to work and with the scouting staff. And Cronin made a point to point out, this is a team effort. Like he's got a great crew.
But think about this though, Chad. Since they have taken over, where have they missed? What have they missed on in terms of draft? I'm not talking about trades. In terms of draft, what have they missed on?
Nothing.
Now, has every player that they've drafted turned into a great player? No. I mean, the jury's still out on Ryan Rupert, right? He was one of the youngest players in the league last year in year 2. I think he has a really, really special future, but it's going to take a while. He's still 21 years old. Chris Murray has not quite been the shooter that they had hoped. He's been a better defender. He's been a better rebounder. He's been great around the rim, but he has not been the shooter that they had hoped. This is year 3. You hope this is the year that he pops from out there.
Yeah. But he has shown other aspects of the game, like you mentioned, where he might be able to carve out a role in the NBA. Yeah, he's been nice. I still believe that the key to this whole turnaround for the Blazers, for me, it comes down to the two guys that they drafted high. It's Scoot and Shaden. If those two guys continue to develop and eventually become stars, it's going to make this transition so smooth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sharp and Scoot, if those guys can continue to develop and be special, that changes everything.
There's no question about it. And I still look at the offense. Like Denny Avdia was phenomenal last year, but I still think that, I don't know if you feel the same way, but when I look at them on offense, like I still see Sharp as the guy with the highest ceiling in terms of his offensive capabilities.
I totally agree. I don't think there's anybody more talented offensively on this team than Shaden Sharp.
All right. Well, it was great to have you in studio. I know you've got to move on to better things because it's Lawson's 5th birthday.
Yeah,
you got to go to
birthday dinner. Black Bear Diner, baby.
Well, give my best to Lawson, man. It's great to see you, buddy.
You too, man.
The problem is when you come in and do this, it makes me remember how much I miss you.
Likewise.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer Insider, going to join us coming up at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, it's now 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? Chad here. The Portland Trailblazers surprising some people last night in the NBA draft. They moved spots back with the Memphis Grizzlies. They land the center from China, Young Hansen. He's going to be introduced tomorrow at the practice facility at 10 a.m. In the trade, the Trailblazers also acquired a 2028 unprotected first-round pick via Orlando and 2 future seconds. The second round of the draft will kick off in just a couple of moments on ESPN. Right now, the Trailblazers do not own a second-round pick. The next big date is NBA free agency. That's going to come up on Monday, June 30th at 3 o'clock local time. The Hillsborough Hops will host Spokane tonight. First pitch at 6:35. Pregame at 6:20 right here on Rip City Radio. And former Ravens kicker Justin Tucker suspended for 10 weeks, the first 10 weeks of the season for violating the league's conduct policy. Shacker just made a good point. If the Patriots were to sign Justin Tucker, he and Bob Kraft could hang out together. That's a story with a happy ending right there. All right, telephone number is 503-248-0620. Big thanks to Travis Demers for hanging out. Really nice to see Trav. And he gets to go out and celebrate his son's birthday now. His son Lawson shares the same birthday as the center the Trailblazers got last night in Young Hansen. Yeah, all I can say about that draft pick, I was stunned just like everyone else. I didn't know who he was. I'm sure like most of you are like, wait, what? Who'd they draft? A 7'1" center from China? Never heard of him. And I hadn't. I've never seen him play. I've seen the highlight packages now. I've done a lot of reading on him over the last 24 hours. But, I was surprised. But the way I look at the draft is very simple. It doesn't really matter who you take or where you take them or if you move back or move up or whatever. The Trailblazers moved back and collected assets, so they didn't give up the farm, and they landed the player they wanted. And all I can tell you is that the one thing I do really like about this team right now, there's a few different things. One, I think they've done a great job of, creating good culture, finding the type of players they want and creating a culture in the locker room that's solid. They've also really done a good job of reconstructing the franchise to kind of match the personality of the head coach. So Chauncey Billups has got a bunch of guys in there now that his type of guys, two-way players, they're going to be tough, defensive-minded, and they're going to get after it. We really started to see that come on in the second half of last season. So that's a good thing. I like the trajectory that the franchise is on now with the young talent they've been able to, put together. But for me, it's the synergy between Joe Cronin and Mike Schmitz that really excites me. The work that they put into it, the synergy they've created within, the front office, and the scouting work that they do. And so if they reach for a guy and they reach for someone who's, that no one else is thinking about in the first round, they wouldn't do that unless they really, really think the guy is going to be a stud. And so I just trust that process, and then we sit back and see how things work out. Now, for a guy like Hansen, I would imagine that it's not going to pop right away. He probably isn't going to play much in his first year, maybe the first couple of years. But a few years down the road, that's when you really start to look for someone like him to start to take off. But what I do like is that they are continuing to stockpile the roster with long and defensive-minded players that can impact the game in a variety of different ways. Versatility. And so that's where I'm at on that. There's only one player that I know that I'm certain of is going to be a stud, and that's Cooper Flagg. Everyone else, I don't know. Ace Bailey, maybe. Dylan Harper, probably. Cooper Flagg, most definitely, but everyone else, it's like I'm not so sure. I do like Danny Ainge taking Ace Bailey in the spot where they were sitting. I don't care where he wants to play. He doesn't have the ability or the gravitas to pick his destination. So Danny Ainge took the best available player, and that could be a valuable piece for them moving into the future, either as a player or possibly trade asset. That was a smart decision. I really wasn't quite sure what Joe Dumars was doing, with the Pelicans by giving up so much to move up 10 spots to draft a player that may not be good on defense. And the Brooklyn Nets were puzzling. Let's see here. We have 5 first-round picks. We're going to use them all, and we're going to take a gaggle of guards. Okay. Certain franchises that remain poor, it's because of poor decision-making. But so far, the young guys that the Blazers have brought in have been legit, and so that excites me. And so we'll see how things work out. Now, with Drew Holiday, look, all I can tell you is what I know about him. Great defender. 3-time first-team All-NBA defender, 3-time second-team All-NBA defender. So you know that you're going to get a guy who's defensive-minded, who is a Chauncey Billups prototype. He's going to play the game the way Chauncey wants. You also get someone who is going to bring good leadership to the locker room because he's such a great guy. Also, when he's on the floor, unlike Anthony Simons, he doesn't require the basketball in his hands to make an impact. I love players that can impact the game without the ball in their hands. And because of that, that means more opportunities for Denny Avdia, Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp to make an impact and be more of a focal point in the offense, initiating the offense, being a creator, a playmaker, everything. So I'm looking forward to that. And we'll see how things continue to shake out. But this team that was trending in the right direction, especially on defense in the second half of last year, they've got a chance to be a top 10 defense throughout the entire season for the upcoming NBA year, which is great. Now, they're going to need more offense, more shooting, but they've got work to do. The work is just beginning, and free agency will kick off on Monday. I would expect more trades to take place. If it were me making the decisions, moving Jeremy Grant out would be my number one priority, so I can clear space for Avdia and Kamar to be the unquestioned starters, and hopefully you can add, different pieces that fit what you've put together thus far, and we'll see how things shake out. But overall, yeah, I'm pretty excited. But with the draft, all I can tell you is if Hansen hits, no one's going to care where he was taken. They'll have a difference maker. But I would much rather have a front office and general manager who's going to be aggressive and take some risk. Sometimes you got to roll the dice a bit. I'm a big believer in that. You got to gamble a little bit to win big. Much better than the previous regime that appeared to be averse to risk. And the problem is when you're averse to risk and you don't take any chances, then, you can't have the big score. So that's where I'm at on that. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. If you got any thoughts on the draft, what took place in the draft, who was selected, you can reach out to me. 503-248-0620. You can find me on social at Chad and Rip City. And coming up here in about 12 minutes, we're going to hear from Sean Heiken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. But that's where I'm at on that. And now we're getting ready to enter into the soft part of the summer schedule. We'll have some baseball, and then we'll wait for football camps to open up. But the Blazers definitely have a lot more work to do. And, Joe Cronin understands that. And, now the harder work has to be done. It's one thing to go into a draft with a plan. You've done your scouting. You select your player based on where you're at, and you move forward. But, the trade market and free agency is a different ballgame because you got to worry about the salary cap. You've got to find other teams that have interest in doing a deal, and you got to be able to put it together. There's a lot more moving parts. So it's not as easy to get things done. But there's a lot of good things that Joe Cronin said last night, including, Hansen's ceiling. Take a listen to this for the young player they drafted that turned 20 today. What is his ceiling? Here's Joe Cronin.
His ceiling's very high. It's extremely difficult to find a young player of that stature with this skill set. And it's translatable stuff that we've seen really, really skilled big men that can do all the things that he can do typically succeed in our league. Yeah, it might take him a little time, but as he figures out the speed and pace of our game and all these things, I wouldn't put a ceiling on him. He's that talented.
Cronin also very complimentary of his passing game. You know, his vision, his creativity in the passing game, being able to set up his teammates, and that's what brought up the topic of the Chinese Jokic.
Joe, is Chinese Jokic a fitting nickname for him?
Well, it's nobody's Jokic. That's a tough one. You know, that's a big shoes to fill. But as far as, you know, his ability to pass the ball, there's not too many his size that can do it like he does.
There you go. Well, that's big praise. That's a big compliment. Now, the amazing part is how global the game is now. Like, they discovered Hansen, and they sent guys over on the other side of the world to scout him, and they've been following him now for a couple of years. Isn't that amazing? Like, you got to put in a lot of work to be able to discover a player like that. So the question is, how'd you find him? Take a listen to this.
We've been scouting him deeply for almost 2 years now. You know, we had a scout identify him during one of his under 18 events, and then we sent Mike and Sergi, our two assistant GMs, over to China that fall to go scout him live. When they came back from that trip, they left very, very impressed, and we were actually hoping he'd be in last year's draft. He didn't declare last year, so we continued to scout him for the last year, you know, this last past season. And as we studied him more and more throughout this process through the spring, you know, we saw him at the Combine, of course, met with him at the Combine, and then we're able to bring him in here and had a good workout here, and we're able to spend more time with him here. So, you know, between our scouts identifying him early on and then some of our big key decision makers seeing him very early on, I felt like we had a big advantage in our scouting process and building our book on him as a player.
Wow. They built the book on him. And they went after him. He was the target. Like, they went in with a plan and they went after him. Now, here's an interesting answer. You know, he was asked about, he couldn't speak or mention the name Drew Holiday because the trade's not official yet, so the NBA prohibited him from talking about it. But he was asked about the balance between drafting young, like we saw with Hansen, compared to the move to get Drew Holiday. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think in the draft in general, you know, especially if you're making a selection, you're treating that ideally in a vacuum where, you know, you're trying to get a talented player that is a long-term addition to your group. Yes, some teams draft for need, and some teams draft based on certain skill sets that can, you know, speed up their winning process. But generally speaking, I just look at the draft on its own. Like, we need to go out for the Trailblazers. You know, you hear me say this all the time. We got to get more talented, and this for us was an opportunity to do that. And yes, adding another 20-year-old to this roster may not point directly to win now maneuvers, but, you know, just trying to balance getting better for the long term and trying to maximize this roster for next season. So it's a delicate balance. I understand that.
One other thing I want you to hear from Cronin. I appreciated this answer because, well, there's two more things I want you to hear from Cronin. First off, he was asked about, I think it was Kerry Eggers, that, you know, do you think this team's going to make the postseason? Are they going to the playoffs?
Possibly. I really like where we're headed. I love the steps we took last year. I'm excited about the steps we're going to take this year and beyond. Would love to get through this transaction window a little further. You know, we still got a big trade window and free agency coming up, but, you know, as is with the stuff we've done already, with the guys we have coming back, I'm very excited about this group. I don't necessarily have expectations of them reaching some benchmark other than I want to just see them keep getting better and better every day, every week, every month.
All right, one last thing from Cronin. This is kind of a pro answer right here. He was asked, you know, does he consider the fan base? He was asked two questions about the fans. If he considers the fans when he's about to make a move like we saw last night in terms of what their reaction might be. And he was also asked about what he thinks about the fans who were freaking out last night on the selection of Hansen on social media. But here he is talking about the fan base.
We care about our fan base. We want our fans to be excited about what we're building, where we're headed, you know, what next season's going to look like, what the big picture looks like. Like, that's important to us. So, you know, I think in times when we make what some would deem a questionable move, you hope that they just trust that we're doing our best to make the best decisions for this club, and that the fans will be patient with what we're trying to achieve. Like I said, with a young player like this, how do we develop him, and how do we help him take these steps to be an impactful guy for us?
Yeah, that was a great answer, because I got to be honest with you. I don't want Joe Cronin or Mike Schmitz or anyone else in the front office considering what the fans might think before they're about to execute a move. They're the ones that put in the work. They're the ones that do their due diligence. They're the ones that know basketball. They scout. They live it, breathe it. They're on it all the time. So I want them to do what they believe is best based on the work they put in. We don't need them sitting back and saying, well, if we do this, the fans might think this. So I'm not really sure what we should do here. No, but he didn't answer it like that. He was very polite. He's like, hey, we care about the fans, but understand we're putting in a lot of work, and we're trying to do everything we can to make this the best team possible. All right, there you go. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. I got this message from the 503, going back to Travis being in studio and his Mitch impression, because Mitch in New Jersey called in. And I got to be honest with you, he nails Mitch. And that's why Travis's Mitch impression, this is one of my favorite moments on the show. Let's say we go to the phones, we go to Jersey, we bring on Mitch. Give me your best Mitch in Jersey impression.
Hey, Chad. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, Chad. Travis, how you doing? How's the boys? That Justin Turner with my Dodgers. He was what? Come on. I mean, you weren't wearing a mask. You had COVID. What are you doing? And Corey Seager, he should have won the MVP. I'm just saying.
Thank you. Let's go out to the phones right now. The man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Mitch in Jersey. What's up, Mitch?
Hey, Travis, how you doing, Chad? Travis, better pray you don't run into me in a dark alley. I'm just kidding. I'm even shorter than you.
Hey, and then imitation is the best form of flattery, right?
There you go. Nice work, Trav. I appreciate that. Oh, I needed that. All right, 503-248-0620. You can find me on social at Chad and Rip City. We'll come back, and when we do, Sean Heiken from Rose Garden Report, our Trailblazer insider here on 620 Rip City Radio, is going to join us. We'll get his reaction to last night's draft, and we'll get his take on Young Hansen and what he thinks. Sean Heiken is up next. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, Rip City Drive, and of course, we got to have this guy on following the draft. He's our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. The one, the only Sean Highkin is back with us. First off, Sean, great work yesterday on the radio with Rose Garden Report, covering the team on social. I thought you and Chris did a fabulous job. Nice way to get it done.
Yeah, it was fun doing the pre-draft drive show with Chris, and then yeah, I mean, it was certainly a memorable night for the Blazers. They don't really do boring drafts.
No, the Blazers.
Last year it was like the year before. So 23 they draft Scoot, which obviously everybody's talking at that time about, like, they drafted Scoot. What does that mean for Dame?
Yeah.
Last year, the Klingon pick was kind of chalk, but they also did the Avdia trade, which kind of came out of nowhere on draft day. And then, yesterday, we spend the last month talking about, are they going to take Carter Bryant? Are they going to take Kasparas Yakaciunas? Are they going to take Igor Demin? Like, there's like a certain number of names that are just kind of floated out there. And then they just go completely off the board and take Yang Hansen out of China, who I don't think anybody really had him on the radar as somebody that could go as high as 16.
Yeah, there's no question about it. First off, I want to give you credit. A couple of weeks ago on the show when you were joining me in studio, you had mentioned that, the Blazers, there was a possibility where you could see them, trading back and collecting some assets, which they did, moving back 5 spots. I mean, I thought when the pick was up at 16 and Memphis was selecting for them, I thought that the player that they would pick for Portland was going to be Azanul. That's kind of the name that went through my mind. Who did you think that they would take when Memphis was selecting at 16?
I would say the one that would have been the most likely in my mind before they did what they did was Kasparas Yakaciunas, the Lithuanian guard that played at Illinois, just because that's a guy that, I know he worked out for them recently over the weekend, and that was somebody that fits a type of prospect that they've liked in the past, and he was kind of the one that a lot of the mock drafts at the major outlets kind of had them linked to. So that seemed like the most logical one to me, but then they went completely off the board in a way that I don't think anybody saw coming. And what's interesting is, I saw a lot of chatter online after they did what they did that they could have gone back even further if they wanted to. I don't know necessarily if that's true. Like, the rumor is, and I haven't gotten this confirmed, but the rumor is that Minnesota was prepared to take Young at 17, which was right after them. So that, I think they went as far back as they felt like they could do without losing the chance at drafting the guy that they wanted to draft.
Yeah, it's the way I look at the draft, and, I'm sure you probably do the same thing. It's like, if you have a player that you've targeted, and they certainly have had their eye on Hansen for a long period of time, you do whatever it takes to get that player, right? Even if other mocks and teams have him projected to go maybe second round, if you truly believe in a guy, do whatever it takes to make it happen.
You have to trust your intel, and you have to trust your scouting staff, and you have to trust your process and your evaluation. And if you're a good front office, you have the people in place that you feel like you've empowered to do the right things and approach it the right way. And yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like, a lot of times, teams will make what is the quote unquote chalk pick because they're worried about getting blowback, and they're worried about, people saying it's a reach, or like it was too far out from, where people said that it was going to go in the mock draft. This is just another reminder. And, this is kind of what I've been saying for, months about trade rumors and stuff, and about how the stuff that you hear about just kind of never, the stuff that gets out ahead of time is usually not the stuff that actually happens. We, case in point, both the Denny Avdia trade and the Anthony Simons-Drew Holiday trade from the other day. The draft stuff is kind of the same way. Like, obviously there are some cases, like, you knew Cooper Flagg was going 1, you knew Dylan Harper was going 2. There's some where it's obvious what they were going to do. For the Blazers, 2 years ago, you knew they were going to take either Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, whichever one was on the board. But once you get out of, like, the top 5 or the top 7, where there's a lot less of a consensus, if you have a guy, even if the rest of the league or, the draft analysts or whatever has them ranked lower, if you have somebody ranked in a certain way, you're not going to, you may get, in the short term, you might, you might get some blowback for, going so far off the board that maybe this ends up being crazy. Maybe this ends up being like they completely whiffed on this, and then when new ownership comes in a year, Joe and his entire staff are getting fired. But like that's a possibility anyway, because you never know what's happening with new ownership. But if they end up hitting on this, then it's going to look like, Denver taking Nikola Jokic in the 40s, or like Kawhi Leonard and Giannis going outside the lottery. Like they're, I'll say this. This is an assertion by Joe Cronin of confidence in his front office staff and belief that they know better than the rest of the NBA about evaluating talent. So we'll see if they're right.
We're talking to our Trailblazer insider, Sean Highkin from Rose Garden Report. So over the last 18 hours, I'm sure you've done a deep dive on young Hansen. So what have you uncovered? What type of player are they getting?
Well, the thing that keeps coming up from people that I talk to is his passing instincts and his playmaking ability for somebody of his size. That's something that it's a little bit of a different game. He's not. I don't think he's the kind of rim protector that Donovan Clingan is, even though he won Defensive Player of the Year in the CBA last year. But, he's a little bit more of an offensive focused big. And I'm going to be really curious to see if those, this is going to be something we ask Chauncey tomorrow at the press conference, if the two of them can play together, or how he kind of sees that shaking out. But it seems like he has a little bit more of an offensive skill set than Clingan does, and is maybe a little bit less developed on the defensive end, although people say he still has good instincts on that end. It's, the questions are going to be that, can he handle the physicality of the NBA? Is he athletic enough? Is he quick enough to be able to guard a bunch of different positions? Is the shot, Joe said last night that he thinks that the shot is going to translate to the NBA, but, that's always a question mark with bigs, especially coming from leagues where there's, the level of competition is not even what it is in somewhere like Spain or France, or somewhere that produces a lot more NBA players. So there's certainly some question marks, but, there's definitely reason to look at, some of the clips and some of the highlights and see the upside.
All right. One of the conspiracy theories that's out there in regard to the selection, there are people that thinking they took Hansen where they did to have access to the Chinese market to increase the value of the team. Now, I checked in with a couple of people that I really respect that have a great understanding of ownership and the business side, and they said that idea is nonsense because one player is not going to significantly increase the value of the team. What's your take on that that's been floating around?
I mean, I don't think it'll hurt their popularity in China to have him on the team if, especially if he ends up panning out and, becoming a good NBA player. But I don't know, you can't make decisions based on, what somebody's, even if it is China, which is the most populated country in the world. And there are more people who are NBA fans in China than there are people in the United States, period. So it's a huge market to tap into, but you can't make a draft pick just based on that. Knowing what I know about this front office and how thorough they are, and the process that went into scouting him, and just generally speaking, like how well connected somebody like Mike Schmitz, or even somebody like Pooh Jeter, who's on Chauncey Billups' coaching staff, but is also involved in some of the front office stuff. How connected those guys are internationally. Like there's no way that these those guys don't think this guy is very good, and ownership said, hey, you need to draft this guy because he's from China, and we can maybe get a Chinese ownership group while we're trying to sell the team. I don't think that entered into it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, with this group, one thing that I have confidence in, Joe Cronin, Mike Schmitz, the basketball side, their scouts, I trust them to do a good job because I look at the track record since they've been in charge, and they've been able to identify a number of great young players who have come in and been a difference maker so far for the team.
Yeah, this is kind of a heat check just because on that front, just because of how outside the consensus it was. And, we're going to find out in the next few years whether they look like geniuses or whether they got a little bit too overconfident. So, it's going to take some time to play out. But, I'm really curious to see how it ends up looking.
I kind of like it, though, because, the previous regime with Neil Olshey, he never took risks. He was averse to it, and he would always play it safe. I kind of like the idea that, hey, if you see a player you like and you want to make a move and be aggressive like that, if it works out and it ends up being a big boom the way they think he's going to be, then I'm all for it.
Not only that, but under Neil Olshey, the Blazers only had one international scout, in their entire organization, which in a league where, you can argue that the two best players in the NBA are Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not only are both of them non-American, but both of them were drafted, in Giannis's case, outside of the lottery, and in Jokic's case, in the second round. And so there were some teams that did invest a lot in international scouting, and those teams were in a position to be on those guys and, see something when maybe everybody else didn't see something. And, I think that, that's a big part of why Joe Cronin hired Mike Schmitz in the first place 3 years ago. And, then they, in conjunction with doing that, they hired several more international scouts, and, they really, beefed up the emphasis on that. You've seen that, whether it's, somebody like Rayon Rupert, who, he hasn't played much his first 2 years, but the team is still very high on him, or, he was somebody in France that they liked a lot. Even somebody like Ibu Badji, who didn't end up sticking in the NBA, but, they were that was something that came up because Mike Schmitz had a lot of connections with like the NBA Africa program and things like that. Those are just kind of swings that this front office is willing to take, and some of them are going to pan out and some of them aren't. Given where Young was drafted, this is kind of one of the higher stakes ones where it's like you better kind of hope that it pans out. But I understand why they took the swing for sure.
Do you think now that they have 5 centers on the roster, does it increase the likelihood that they might move one of the centers this offseason?
You would think. I mean, I don't think they're done making moves. I still think this is especially true after the Drew Holiday thing. I still think that moving Jeremy Grant is priority one, or it should be anyway, just because of the money and the runway that you have to clear for Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara. But yeah, the center thing is going to be interesting to see develop, although I don't know how much of a logjam there really is, because I'm not really expecting Robert Williams to be much of a factor, just because you can never count on him being healthy. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of his career at this point. He's played 26 games over the course of his 2 seasons in Portland, so you can't really factor him into plans. DeAndre Ayton, even if he's not a long-term piece, like, he's only going to be here for 1 more year. He's got he's on an expiring contract. So in the same way that last year, with Donovan Clingan coming in as a top 10 pick, he still wasn't ready to play starter minutes right away. Do we think Young is going to be ready to play big minutes right away, or is it going to be more of a developmental project? I'm honestly not sure what that is, but given that the move that the Blazers made earlier this week to bring in Drew Holiday signifies that they are at least part of what they're doing is trying to compete now and, be in the mix for the play-in or the playoffs. Unless you think that both Donovan and Young are fully ready to be contributors on a team that's trying to win now, if they don't, find a trade for DeAndre Ayton, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Have you heard anything else on who will be the starter at point guard over the last couple of days?
That's a Chauncey question, and that's probably not going to get answered until training camp. We are going to talk to Chauncey tomorrow at the press conference, but I'm going to guess that he's probably not going to be allowed to talk about that trade because it's not made official yet, so that's not going to happen until after July 6th. But I'm going to guess that the answer will be the same that it's been on for any of these other debates about, who's going to start or who's going to come off the bench. It's, whoever's earned it, and whether that's Scoot, whether that's Shaden, whether that's Drew Holiday, whether that's Denny Avdia or, Donovan Clingan, Toumani Camara, Jeremy, like, they have a lot of guys that you can make an argument, if they're on the team, they should start. But that's why I still think that between now and the end of the offseason, Joe Cronin still has some work to do as far as clearing up some of the other stuff in the rotation. But it's certainly an interesting collection of players that they have right now, and there's not a lot of just kind of clean answers for this stuff.
All right, so the free agency period will kick off on the 30th at 3 o'clock Portland time. What's next? Is it Jeremy Grant? Is it Ayton or Williams? Like, what do you think's next?
I would think, and priority one this whole offseason for me has been they need to find a way to trade Jeremy Grant. I would still think that that's probably the next thing on the docket. What's going to be interesting is whether they are able to, this is part of why the trade with Boston hasn't been made official yet, because I wonder if, they get another deal done, they can, rope it all into one transaction for kind of cap management purposes. So I would think between now and July 6th, they'll have kind of broadly figured out what the rest of their offseason is going to look like and what they're going to do as far as some of those veteran players.
All right, Sean Highkin, he's our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. Joining me here on the Rip City Drive. Hey, Sean, really appreciate it, man. Great work yesterday. It was great to see you in operation. We'll catch up soon because we get a little bit of a breather, and then all of a sudden the 30th will be here and hopefully more fireworks.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to you, Chad. It's been an interesting week, and it's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks for sure.
All right, I think how this is going to work tomorrow, I'm going to plan on being in studio at around 10 a.m., and we should, if everything comes together, be able to carry the press conference where they're going to introduce Young Hansen, the new center from China that the Blazers acquired in the draft last night. So that's the plan for tomorrow. And working on some things right now for the Rip City Drive that could be very good in terms of the Trailblazers as well. So I got some pretty good things in the works for tomorrow. All right, here's my guy, Raider Mike. Let's go out to the phones right now. Raider Mike, my friend, what's up, brother?
Hey, Chad. How you doing? How you doing over there?
What's up?
Dude, he's become like a cult movie.
Yeah.
Because he calls all my Raider Nation radio shows.
Yes.
And they call him Mushmouth Mitch.
Mushmouth Mitch. Dude.
And we just talk about the craziness of his calls.
Yeah. He's like a serial phone caller to radio shows on the West
now,
Coast.
Chad. He's retired now.
Too much free time.
Too much free time, man.
Yeah.
And you don't call and talk about USC constantly. Now, the Raiders have got a lot of great draft picks out of USC.
It's true.
I love Marcus Allen. But anyway, I just thought you'd want to know that with I miss Travis. Got him. I miss the Godfather. You had him on the other day. I tried to come in, kind of get a check on him. How's he doing, man?
He's doing well. I was up. I played a practice round up in Longview on Sunday with his wife because we're going to play in a tournament this weekend. Yeah, I know, Longview. And the Godfather was there, so I got a chance to talk to him throughout the afternoon. But, yeah, he's doing really well. I did want to ask you a question. I saw this post on social media, and it listed every NFL team's GOAT, like the Dolphins, Dan Marino, Elway for the Broncos and so forth, Mahomes for the Chiefs. Who of all the players in the history, like who is the Raiders' GOAT?
You got to go. I'm going to go Cliff Branch because he has 3 rings. He won all 3. And he changed the game. I mean, you saw, well, no, you were probably too young, but the signs in the stands, speed kills. He was horrifying when he came into the league. That's why Fred Biletnikoff wiped Stickum all over. And Cliff learned to catch without Stickum eventually. But anyway, I'd say Cliff Branch. I mean, there's so many. I mean, Howie Long is right there.
Yeah, he was
Jack Tatum.
Yeah, Howie Long, 8-time Pro Bowler. Tatum,
Tatum.
Gina Upshaw, Jim Otto. The list that I saw named Marcus Allen.
I can go there too. I can't. I just, there's so many great Raiders. The Broncos have the same deal.
Yeah, I had forgotten it. Allen was the NFL MVP in '85. I had forgotten that.
Yeah, and we lost to New England in the playoffs. I mean, God, I'm glad we did because the Bears would have just tore our head off.
Hey, Mike, what was the falling out between Al and Marcus? What happened?
The rumors. What I think happened, what actually happened, I don't know. Apparently, it had to do with a woman. He was doing a woman he was not supposed to be doing. That's the rumor, completely unconfirmed. I'm just,
that was the rumor back in the day. That was the rumor back in the day. Okay. I didn't know that.
And on the West Coast, I mean, Marcus, took OJ's chick. Marcus was a ladies' man. Marcus topped OJ, So it's like, and he's in LA when it's going down. there's so many things that can go on down in Los Angeles.
And that's true.
In the 80s. I was living there, bro.
I know. But that, man,
it was off the hook.
But it's a long list. Art Shell, Ken Stabler, Fred Bolitnikoff, Willie Brown, Howie Long, Tim Brown, who I loved, Marcus Allen, Gene Upshaw, and Jim Otto, just to name a few. Studs.
Alzado, Matuzak, Tatum, Atkinson. I mean, Villapiano. Just on and on. That's why I love my Raiders so much.
Yeah. Clip Branch was awesome. Yeah, I guess I was just curious what you thought. So you don't have a problem with them selecting Marcus?
No, hell no.
Okay.
There's too many. I just go with Cliff because he's got all 3 rings. He changed the game forever. I mean, everyone tried to copy Speed Kills. It took the league 10 years to find other Cliff Branches.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could argue 20 players there, Chad, all day long.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's, yep.
I missed your voice, Chad. I know we're running out of time.
No, it's okay, man. I'm glad you called. I'm glad you're well, and I missed you too. We were just talking about you today.
I am in Burnsville now.
Oh, Burnsville.
Which is the most horrifying place in North Carolina. There's not one sports bar I have to drive to Asheville now. Cool town. I'm singing in it for the first time tonight. So it's all good. Apparently somebody just died.
It
and
says,
you can hear the sirens.
Yeah. It says here that Burnsville was founded on...
check out the name of this, Chad. I'm going to give it up for him.
What do you got?
Best name ever for a place I want to sing. Daddy Mac's Down Home Dive.
Oh, that's nice. Daddy Mac's
Asheville,
Down Home
North
Dive.
Carolina.
That works.
Yeah. Raider Mike's performing there tonight, guys. Come out. Buy me a shot. I'll sing you a song.
All right, buddy. You're the man.
All right. Big guy. Peace.
There
Love
you
you,
go.
bro. Miss you. Later.
Love him. It's amazing. In the 2000 census, there were 1,623 people, 748 households, and 412 families residing in the town. All right. And the population in 2020, 1,614. So if you throw in Raider Mike, 1,615. All right. Big thanks to Travis Demers and to all of you